I think we need to go ahead and get ourselves going here. It's 8:07, so in the interest of everybody's schedule, I'd like to go ahead and move things along. I'd like to welcome everybody to the June meeting of the Portland Industrial Commission. And before we actually get started, I think Mr. Moore has a couple of announcements, introductions. So.
Certainly. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Wanted to start off by introducing some new staff members, one to the city as a whole as far as the executive management team. First, I'd like to introduce our new Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Cheryl Spivey. She comes to us from Fayetteville, North Carolina.
That's correct.
Wealth of knowledge, and normally Dr. Patton would give this glowing introduction. Unfortunately, Dr. Patton is not here at the moment, but certainly we welcome Ms. Spivey to the team. She has already hit the ground running, and we are very excited about what she brings to the city. So I want to welcome her.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And then we also, I'm very excited, selfishly, because we also have a new member to our economic development team, and that is Ms. Ashley Henley. Ms. Henley comes to us from, her background is in government affairs, legislative services, and economic development as well. She was previously with TBA, or Tidewater Builders Association. She's originally from Louisiana. So from New Orleans. So we welcome her. Certainly we have had a time without staff, but we have Ms. Henley on board. She will head up our business retention program. We are also very excited to notate that come Monday we will have 2 additional staff members. So our staff will be up to 5 members, an opportunity to still hire a couple more, but we are very excited about the position that we will be in the next 30 days.
Okay, thank you. Well, welcome to both of you all. We look forward to having you along with us.
Mr. Chair, I'd also like to just introduce real quickly Ms. Nina Patel, who has just joined the City Attorney's Office.
Great. Okay.
Nina's from Richmond originally, went out to California and decided to come back east, and so we are happy to have her, and she will be working with you all as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, we have lots of new people, new faces around, so very exciting. Okay, well, if we can go ahead and get started with the roll call, make sure we have a quorum. Mr. Moore?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barham.
Here.
Mr. Bento.
Here.
Mr. McGuire. Mr. Peterman.
Here.
Mr. Reinerberg.
Here.
Mr. Toops. Mr. Wallace.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, that's 5 out of 7. I'm not sure where Mr. Toops is, but that's okay. We're all 5 of us are here, so that's good enough. The minutes from the last meeting were just distributed this morning. If everybody could take a moment just to look them over right quick, just to see if there's any discussion. So when you all are ready, I'll entertain a motion to have these minutes adopted as they have been presented, unless there's any discussion or corrections.
So motion?
So move to second.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Bento, second. All in favor, roll call?
Mr. Barham.
Yes.
Mr. Bento.
Yes.
Mr. Peterman.
Yes.
Mr. McGuire. I'm sorry, Mr. Reinerberg.
Yes.
And Mr. Wallace.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the minutes are adopted. Thank you very much. Our financials are actually not quite ready at this time. I lost my train of thought. Oh, that's right. Lee Ogilvy is on vacation, and she doesn't have them quite ready. So if it's okay with the commissioners, we are going to defer the adoption of the approval of the financials until the July meeting, if that is all right with everyone.
No
Okay.
problem.
Okay. Then we will move along. All right, at this time, we'll go into old business, and we have a slate of officers, I believe, that needs to be voted on, and I will call on. Mr. Toots is not here, so Mr. Peterman, do you have the slate of officers by chance?
I do not have it with me right now.
Okay, but I
We
think
sent it electronically, I think.
Yeah, it was sent electronically, and if I recall, the slate is for Mr. Bento to become the president. Mr. Toops will become the chairman. Mr. Toops will become vice chairman, and Mr. Reineberg will remain on as the treasurer. So that is a proposed slate of officers. So I will put that forth as a motion, and I guess at this time also I will take any nominations from the floor if there are any. If not, then we'll close nominations and vote on that slate.
We need a motion.
I think the motion's there. I think you can just vote on the slate.
Is it okay for me to make the motion as the
Yes,
chairman?
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
so I'll make that motion. I guess we need a second on that then.
Seconded.
Okay, so that's seconded.
All right. And Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Bento,
Yes.
Mr. Peterman,
Yes.
Mr. Reineberg,
Yes.
and Mr. Wallace.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, very well. Well, with that, I'm no longer chairman. Well, I am for the rest of this meeting.
You're not getting off that easy.
Oh, yeah. I would like to thank Mr. Moore and Jeff Miller and city manager and all of those, all the commissioners here that have made my job easy. And without you guys, I couldn't have done it. So thank you very much. And I'll turn things over to Mr. Bento as of July, and I'm sure he will do a fine job for us. So appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Moore, I'll turn it over to you if you want to discuss what our next meeting is going to be about. And
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. Again, good morning. The next meeting for the PPIC will actually be a joint meeting with the EDA. Back some time ago when we had our discussion, we talked about the opportunity to collaborate with the additional boards that we have here in the city. Certainly you all agreed that it would be a good idea to have a joint meeting at least maybe twice a year, just to understand what each board is doing, see where there's some partnership opportunities. So that first meeting for this year will be next month. So instead of having an actual PPIC meeting, you'll have a joint EDA PPIC meeting on Tuesday, July 17th. That is a normal EDA meeting, still 8 o'clock in the morning. We will have refreshments for you all. You have some business to take care of, certainly with the financials and the approval of the minutes from this morning. But certainly an opportunity for you all to sit down and talk and discuss. We don't have anything particularly on the agenda, so I would like for some input as to what topics, if any, you all would like to discuss, any specific topics. But certainly an opportunity for you all to sit down and talk about commonalities between the boards.
okay.
And we would, as soon as possible, like to kind of get a head count to make sure that we, one, will have a quorum, and two, just how many people will be available for that meeting. So if you could just let Ms. Lee Ogilvie know, that would be great.
Okay, very well. Very well. Well, if everybody can be thinking about that between now and next month, what topics we would like to discuss. I think it's, when we did this in December, it was really a good thing to see what EDA had going on, and I think we need to try to pull closer with them and work on things together. It makes sense. So, okay, we'll move forward with that, and I'll be looking forward to that. All right, then we'll move into new business, and Mr. Gullickson, I believe you have a presentation for us. Is that correct?
Before we do that, Mr. Chairman, it's kind of in line with old business, and I picked it up in the minutes there. I know that last month you briefed on the Access Portsmouth VA, the new EDA or Economic Development website that your office had launched. I'm just curious, do you have any statistics, web logs, anything on how successful that site has been that you could share with us?
Oh, yes, sir. I'm glad you asked that question. That's another kind of topic and item that we have tried to make sure we maintain in our office, certainly is the activity on this new website. To date, we have had about 2,000 new users, and new being just over the last, since we launched it in April. So we're talking in the last 2-3 months. We've had about 2,000 new users. They go consistently to the Access Portsmouth portion of the website. the next most popular section of the website, Good, Bad, or Indifferent, is the director page. Now, I don't know why that is. But it's certainly what it appears is that they are looking for information. They are looking for information about the staff. They're looking for information about what opportunities we have from a grant standpoint in the city. So obviously they are business individuals looking at the site. So that is very exciting for us. Those analytics are something we haven't kept track of, but we are in the digital age. Data mining and big data is certainly a key aspect of economic development going forward. We have even broken it down to just various areas as to what areas of the country they are viewing from. We are seeing California, we are seeing Texas, we are seeing the Charlotte region, which is a very good thing to understand because, excuse me, those are competitors. So we have either we have either our competitors or businesses in that area looking to our area, more specifically against Portsmouth. So what we're finding is it has been a success, and that's just with the initial rollout. We have several things that we will be adding to the site. Here in the next about 30, 45 days, you will see the property information going up with regards to what properties the EDA and the PPIC holds and what are available. Our tiering system will certainly be up there as well, ranking our properties. Just last night, we had at the council work session, Mr. Joe Hines, who presented to you all a few months ago, bring his site readiness discussion to council. I think that was very well received, and I'll certainly yield to Councilman Moody for any comment on that. But I think it has been a success, and certainly we will periodically come back with that information for both boards going forward.
I appreciate that update. I agree that the analytics is absolutely critical, and I'm glad to hear that you're already on top of that, especially identifying what, even if we don't know who is actually looking from those IP addresses in those areas, we kind of know where they're physically sitting.
Exactly.
And it can give us an indicator of potentially what businesses or industries are looking to make a move here, or at least that we're on the list. If you use the Timmons
Certainly.
Group model, that we've made the top 10 of cities. So I think it's excellent.
Certainly. Not to give away our secrets and how we do things, but it also gives us an opportunity to understand where we should be from a travel standpoint. Certainly last month, we did not have a meeting because of travel of staff, but we are looking to, as we ramp up staff and add additional staff, we will be doing more travel. We will be out and about waving the Portsmouth flag. So this gives us an opportunity to point out and really showcase in front of those individuals that are looking. So we will be utilizing that going forward.
Was that a capability, the analytical capability, was that not available until we rolled out this new website?
Well, I think what you had was the website that we had currently was part of the city's overall government website. When we looked to have that additional extension, which was our, it's again not necessarily a separate website, but an extension of the city's website. The opportunity to have that separate extension
Gave us the analytics.
give us the analytics, so we can
That's
see
critical.
that. So we can see that, and that was one thing we really wanted to have. We wanted to make sure we had that information. So we do see the importance of that. So
Thank you.
well.
Very good. Great. Okay. A good interaction. All right, then, Chris, if you would like to
Yeah.
go ahead with your presentation, we're ready.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Moody, thank you. Robert, thank you for this opportunity. It's always an honor to get in front of the group here at the PPIC and talk about the Port of Virginia. Not only a real economic gem for the Commonwealth, but here for the city of Portsmouth. I failed to get a clicker before starting this presentation as I look over here. I'll just get going off the mouse and we'll make way here. So I thought I'd just I want to give everyone just a point of reference. I know we're very familiar with our hometown, city of Portsmouth, and where we lie in the harbor, but I always like to open a presentation with this project, just with this photo, based on just how significant and impressive it is. We are so very fortunate here in Hampton Roads to have a tremendous harbor and infrastructure, as you see. That 50-foot inbound, outbound shipping channel, these 4 terminals spread throughout the region truly are something to be proud of and to be really fortunate to have. I'll just orientate Norfolk International Terminal, NIT, that's what NIT stands for. That is our biggest terminal up there in Norfolk. We have PMT at the bottom of the screen, Portsmouth Marine Terminal, As you can see today, that facility is back to booming. And boy, thank goodness we have that facility and had it as such for an overflow. Because as we've undertaken 2 major expansion projects and seen record volumes, we surely have needed Portsmouth Marine Terminal to serve as a relief for that cargo. VIG, Virginia National Gateway in Portsmouth, that's currently being expanded, and I'll talk to that. And yesterday we were all fortunate. We had a milestone. We celebrated that halfway point of the construction project there at VIG. For those of you new to Portsmouth, really this is a gem because it was the first semi-automated container handling facility in all the Americas. And that really put the Port of Virginia and the city of Portsmouth on the map. And that's 11 years ago. And now what we're undertaking is the phase 2, the completion, the full build out of a semi-automated container handling facility, state-of-the-art, world-class facility. We have Newport News Marine Terminal, which is a break bulk facility, and then also I will touch on Craney Island Marine Terminal, because not only do we have a lot going on and stuff to really be proud of, we're also the only East Coast port to have a terminal already permitted to the size of which we're talking about for Craney Island Marine Terminal, 600 acres. There's nowhere else on the East Coast that has that permitted today for the future of container handling. So Virginia National Gateway, as I mentioned, had a real nice milestone event yesterday. I know the mayor and vice mayor were there, as well as the governor, to sort of to christen or to commission a couple of the new cranes. This project is a $320 million undertaking. And one that the initial site or the initial terminal was developed in a 2-phase approach. So we are completing this project obviously with phase 2. It's also going to add tremendous capacity. As I mentioned, growth is something we've experienced and we're very fortunate for. But with that growth come challenges, and so this extra capacity cannot come online soon enough. In fact, today we have 3 stacks online, which are on the far right side or the bottom right side of the screen. We'll have 3 more stacks come online here at the end of the month, so any day now, because obviously we're almost there at the end of June, with complete build out of this facility done less than a year from now. So if I come back next June, we'll be talking about the completion of this facility and the fact that we've now doubled its capacity and really, again, gaining that recognition for what is one of the most advanced container handling facilities anywhere in the Americas, let alone on the U.S. East Coast. The rail is a big element. This facility has the benefit of both the CSX and Norfolk Southern providing on-dock rail service. Rail is a big piece of our business at the Port of Virginia. In fact, if you look at other ports up and down the East Coast, there's not another port with a bigger percentage of their overall volume landing onto the rail than the Port of Virginia. How does that benefit us right here in Portsmouth? Well, I can tell you it adds to a healthy port because it's a portfolio of our business. It's a piece of our business that we're able to capture maybe from other ports to go to the Midwest, markets like Columbus, Ohio, Chicago, Louisville, Kentucky, and it's also eliminating a lot of that congestion. As we're all very fortunate on 164 there to have that double stack track, two tracks, that run out west, not impacting the day-to-day citizens and receiving the benefit of that volume. So it's something of significance. We're also extending the wharf. Today, if you have a chance to drive by VIG, you'll see we have a couple big ships over there. We're adding 800 feet to the wharf. The decking is there, so they're beginning to pour the concrete onto that 800-foot extension. That'll give us 4,000 feet of berth space, which will then allow us to handle 3 ultra-large container vessels. I think the vernacular has changed a number of different times. We say post-Panamax or neo post-Panamax, and now I think we're using this ULCV, ultra-large container vessels, which really are those that are upwards of 12,000 20-foot equivalent units or TEUs, and they're amazing to see. And it's a special vessel, and we're seeing those 4 times a week. So that will only increase over time, and it's really important for us to have that extra berthing space. Not only is the berth getting longer, we have 4 cranes currently well under construction by ZPMC. They should be arriving in the winter of this year, so I would guess in December timeframe, and they will be up and running in February. So we'll have 4 new ship-to-shore cranes as well to land on that new berth we're extending out. So I mentioned we have a second project because, well, one project isn't enough, and really there's some, obviously, efficiencies gained by doing these somewhat in sequence, and that we have a doubling or an expansion of the facility at Norfolk International Terminal underway. Same automation that really was something we've learned at VIG and really become proficient on, that automatic stacking crane that works the yard. Well, this is a wheeled operation, yet it works very, very well, but in the scenario in which it's currently standing, you're not really able to add additional capacity. You've got what you got. You got the real estate you have, and so with the same technology that we're fortunate to have here in Portsmouth, we're just duplicating that over at NIT and adding, without any real estate, because we can't grow the facility. It's static, but we're adding 400,000 400,000 containers or 800,000 TEUs worth of capacity at NIT. So it's a really exciting time for Virginia. I think it's a great time because not only is it recognized that we have led the charge on the East Coast for these big, ultra-large container vessels, we also are making landside investments today to accommodate that future growth because we've been very fortunate. Record volumes, we've seen growth at a level which we've never experienced, and we still see that growth coming, and we need that extra capacity. So without breaking the system, which we sure don't want to do, and by any means hinder this wonderful opportunity that we have, these investments are coming online at the proper and perfect time. Now, it's great to have the land side, and like I said, we're very fortunate. I know a lot of other ports up and down the East Coast, for those of you who keep tabs on what's going on. Our friends in the Southeast, Charleston and Savannah, have major dredging projects underway, spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to deepen channels to allow complete access of these large ships up their rivers. Well, I mentioned earlier, we have the 50 feet, and we've been very fortunate since the late 80s to have a 50-foot channel here in the Port of Hampton Roads. But with these new ships, 50 feet isn't enough. We need to go deeper. Not only do we need to go deeper, we need to go wider. The beam of these vessels also is a constraint or a concern. Today we do face challenges where one of these large ships comes into the harbor and the Coast Guard is having to close the channel to other commercial traffic, and obviously no one wants their business to be impacted in any way, and logistics is none greater where these type of impacts are significant, and so we obviously want to be mindful to do our part in eliminating that. And so with a plan moving forward, in fact, in the most recent budget that's been passed and signed, the state budget does include funds to kick off the preliminary engineering design work for our widening and deepening of our channels here in the Port of Hampton Roads. That's, like I said, it's going to be deeper and wider. So out in the primary, they call it deep water cut, it's 59 feet. That's where we're looking to go to. 59 feet will be 56 feet, kind of between Thimble Shoals and what you kind of call the middle harbor, and then going down to 55 feet in the harbor between, the inside harbor. Inside the Beltway will be at 55 feet. We also, like I said, we'll widen the channels between 13 and 1,400 feet. Again, this will allow for that two-way flow of commercial traffic, which is crucial. As a side, VIG, not only is it, just go back to VIG, not only is it the most advanced automated facility that really exists in the Americas, but they also initially built that at 55 feet at the berth. So that VIG's got a step ahead in that. In fact, at the berth at VIG, we are at 55 feet. So this new channel will tie just right in to what's in existence. This is an exciting project, and it's one that's going to truly have tremendous impacts to us at the port and as a harbor, as a community here in Hampton Roads. So looking out, we're adding tremendous capacity. I think I've talked about the two projects that we have underway, and that really, you look out 5-10 years, we're in a good position. We kind of have some wiggle room, more or less, to function and grow our business year over year. But where do we go moving forward? I talked about this wonderful opportunity, Karenni Island Marine Terminal. Today, this is just a rendering. It can change. I guarantee it will change at some point, just how it's positioned. But I think you get the intent, the idea of what we have in mind in developing there at Karenni Island Marine Terminal. It's going to be a state-of-the-art, over 500 acres, semi-automated, very much like what we have today at VIG. It's just going to have, tremendous crane lifting capacity, somewhere in that 28, 30 Suez class or ultra-large container vessel class cranes. We will have on-dock rail. It'll obviously be serviced by Commonwealth Rail. We'll tie in to both the CSX and Norfolk Southern. And just the capacity, that potential for adding another 5 million TEUs, and you add it to our current capacity looking out 30 years from now, all of a sudden we're a port that has capacity in upwards of 10 million TEUs. I mean, those are numbers greater than New York, New Jersey today, or really anywhere else on the U.S. East Coast. So I tell you, it's extremely exciting to have the opportunity to develop this site. I think at this point, as we stand today, you'll see, we're working on it. It's a slow build. Karenni Island is a dredge disposal area, and we're fortunate that with the dredging projects we have underway, we are doing some dredging over at NIT here shortly to kind of just expand the turning basin. I guess they refer to it as a knuckle coming in. The pilots would like a little more room in bringing in the ultra-large container vessels. So there'll be some dredge spoils we'll be piping over here come later this summer. But really, as we look to deepen and widen the channel, this becomes the receptacle of those dredge materials as we can build up Karenni Island Marine Terminal. And as you can see, I mean, we have had progress in that, those two sort of peninsulas that stick out, those really weren't there 10 years ago. And those are the efforts of the Port of Virginia through federal funding to begin that build-up process, because it's going to be significant. Right here in this image, it only represents about 40% of the terminal. So there's another 60% to the left or to the north that will also continue as these cells build up with the dredge material and begin to settle in as we then begin engineering the next facility for the Port of Virginia. It's a partnership. I know we probably use this one in economic development as Robert and I talk on a regular basis, and as we know, economic development is a partnership, and that it's working with all the different stakeholders, from the localities to the regions, obviously to the Commonwealth. We play a part in that, and we value these variety of different relationships, and we each one is equally as important to ultimately success, and that's really our goal is to drive this economy here in the city of Portsmouth, obviously in the region, and throughout the Commonwealth. So we value that. I value the opportunity to come before the board today to make these remarks. I will be happy to field any questions about this, and obviously open invite too. Please know that for those of the board members who haven't visited any of our facilities, I'd love to have you come check it out, especially now that we've got some new capacity online and some new equipment. You can really see just in 10 years how some of the technologies have changed and just continue to improve, which is very exciting. And we become that showcase port here on the East Coast.
So, Chris, do you see any endpoints in what you're doing here? I mean, is it transportation, or is it pier space or rail, or what keeps you from growing any further than what you're anticipating?
Well, that's a terrific question. I think you have only so much freight in the market, so you some of it's population driven. I think you have consumption. If you look in the Northeast, in our New York, New Jersey, I mean, they have 6 million TEUs versus our maybe we'll do 2.9 million TEUs, 20-foot equivalent units here for fiscal year 18. So, I mean, some of it's population driven, and that you just don't have that direct consumer market.
Demand.
I think that probably is the easiest one to point to. I think ultimately there'll be some continued consolidation, as there are a lot of ports up and down the East Coast. Boston's got a port, New Jersey, you've got Philadelphia, Baltimore, and I think what's happening, especially with these introduction of the ultra-large container vessels as a result of the Panama Canal expansion, and I apologize, I kind of glossed over that. But I mean, what has resulted in the East Coast experiencing these big ships is the expansion that took place there at the Panama Canal, allowing these ships from Asia to transit. Well, there's only so many port facilities that can handle these ultra-large container ships, and us, the Port of Virginia being the one, and others playing catch-up, I think, we'll start seeing, there become some gateways. So maybe a Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Southeast gateway, that's going to help because that's going to drive some freight, some consolidation. And then we continue to look for opportunities on the West Coast. I think there's sometimes that mindset, you do things just because it works and you've always done it that way. And it's very interesting to run into companies that are importing freight, in most cases, off the Far East and coming in through West Coast ports. And you kind of look at their business model and you realize they got a lot of customers sitting here on the East Coast. And you kind of introduce the idea, well, why is it? Well, because it works. And I understand, they don't want to induce additional risk. But a lot of companies are realizing through those savings, through technology, and being able to have a more complex supply chain, they can really drive down some costs by looking at East Coast ports. And so we continue to present these value propositions. And as we work as economic developers, because it is that marketing, it's that mid to long-term play, I think we're going to continue to see results. So I hope that answers the question.
Where do we stand now amongst the other East Coast ports as who's busiest and
Sure. So
second, third?
So New York, New Jersey has that #1 position, and they're probably north of 6 million TEUs at this point. Savannah has done a great job, and they're about 1 million containers ahead of us. They're about 3.8, 3.9 million TEUs, and so then we come in the third position.
Do you feel like Savannah, I know we've always sort of played catch up to Savannah, do you think that they have a larger market share as far as the entire Southeast down there, and we're kind of in the middle of the two, or?
I mean, I think there's some of that can contribute. I mean, you can definitely see where Savannah serves the Southeast market, and you look at our population as a country continues to move to the Southeast. I think they also have benefited from the fact you get a lot of first calls. Right. Which is great for imports because most the imports are tied to retail sales, and they want to get the product off the ship and into the stores, and so that I think they've had some competitive advantage which they've been able to capitalize on. But on the flip side, I think there's opportunity for us, one, to handle large vessels, and I mean I'm talking 14,000 plus, start getting to 15, 16, and those are going to be challenges even with Savannah. Undertaking their dredging project, which they're spending upwards of maybe $900 million to go from a 42-foot depth to 49 feet there in the Savannah River, 47 feet in the Savannah River. I still think, you start looking at just the ease and access into this port, and then the on-dock capacity. I think we can make. I think it's something we can overtake. Obviously they're ahead of us, but. I feel, optimistic that there are opportunities for us to grow our business organically, and not that we're going to be shedding their business, but to grow organically and see our volumes continue to grow.
They're having real challenges with their growth right now. I mean, they haven't been able to invest as quickly as the growth has been bringing on. Griff Lynch had mentioned that they had 32% growth in container business, but only 2% growth in their chassis. And you need chassis to move trucks, containers, and so they're having some real challenges out there. Sometimes it can take us up to 10 days to get boxes out of there.
Is that right?
Because there's no capacity. Yeah, so they're having their own challenges as they grow, which we all will.
Yeah, I say, there's always our day. We've had some, but we're fortunate, and I think we're trying to be proactive and getting out there to tell our message, to tell our story, and explain, look, yeah, there are some days where there might be hiccups or congestions or failures based on the fact that we've got these huge projects going on. But no, these are big moves, and that is a rising tide that's going to really raise all of us in the industry and to hopefully be a benefit.
What do you think the impact of what's going on with tariffs
Sure. I mean, it's something we're watching. I mean, you know, I think the more immediate pain is felt for some of those exporters who have, you know, freight on the water. And I think it was a story I heard about a pork exporter and had product and pretty much landed and was told, well, I know you had a deal, but you can't bring the product in. And so then it has to go down market. And usually that adjusts, the pricing begins to get adjusted. And so obviously less profit, less money being made. So I think on the exports, yeah, we're going to see. And once we get into soybean, you know, soybean's a huge export. And really a small percentage of the overall exported soybean market from the U.S. goes in containers. But it's still a significant amount of containers that are exported via containers with soybeans, and so we'll see. But you look at the numbers, you step back and just look at the consumption of like soybeans, and especially there in China, it's significant. And if you were to pull out the capacity or the production of soybeans in our country out of the mix, there's just not enough global supply out there to meet the demand. So we'll see what happens there. It's going to be real interesting. I know, you know, maybe Guy has a remark or not, but it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we're also seeing a lot of our customers that deal in the manufacturing are having some real trouble here, particularly in Virginia. We have a couple of customers where steel prices, because they've gone up or they're supposedly going to go up, they've had to take the money that they were going to use in investment in, say, in IT and that, they've had to divert that over to what the supposed new tariffs are going to be on them, because they don't know. We still don't know what's going to happen, and that's the worst thing for a business is uncertainty. And we got a lot of it going on right now in the businesses. So it's affecting a lot of industries, both on the import side and the export side.
There's a lot of yacht companies now that are starting to contemplate moving offshore for that reason.
Harley Davidson announced that they were looking at moving to Europe.
That's a little bit not quite accurate. Harley Davidson was kind of doing that anyway,
Yeah.
but this
Well,
kind
they
of
made a big
propelled them
move,
to do it.
yeah.
But there's a lot of yacht manufacturers that feel like, you know, that's a huge part. Some of them are as high as 35 and 40% of their sales are in Europe. That's a huge market over there. They're trying to catch up to the U.S. in the smaller yachts, you know, the 40, 50 to 80-foot range. And so now they're thinking about moving that production offshore. So that's a huge impact.
Yeah.
Too much uncertainty.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
Absolutely. Do you, just one last thing, do you have an update on the Southern Branch channel deepening, where we are with that?
Yeah, and I'll verify this because I was thinking about coming in this morning. I believe that project has been kind of combined with what we're doing in the primary channel. Not that we're doing the PED, the preliminary engineering design work, but I think with some of the review that's required at the Army Corps level, I believe that project has been bundled.
Okay.
So I'll get it. I have to follow up because I don't have a definite answer on that, but I will
Okay.
get back to you.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, definitely something that's, I know our folks in government affairs are actively working that. It is part of our interest to continue to move that forward.
Chris, where does the port see PMT going eventually? Because, I mean, when you build out all these other terminals and that, you won't have the need as much for the overflow capacity. So where do you guys envision, what's the role of PMT?
Sure, that's a great question. I think that's where, you know, working economic development, those are some of the conversations we're having right now, because I believe it really becomes sort of a multi-dimensional or multi-purpose terminal. I think there'll be some, you know, shifting of freight sooner and later as the new capacity, as you mentioned, comes online at VIG. We will start shifting containers back to back there from PMT to VIG. But that just gives us a neat opportunity to look at, you know, is it vehicle processing, which you know, throughout time PMT has served that function very well. Is it some large objects that aren't able to go, you know, over the road, that are being produced, handled, manufactured of some sort? You know, I think we're really open at this point to really evaluate the opportunities and try to tie not only the freight, but really the economic development and the jobs that an opportunity that lands there could possibly derive for the city. So we want to be very mindful, and we're definitely evaluating. There are some opportunities. People are coming to us. Not only are we out there prospecting, knocking on doors, We've had a number of interested parties come to us and present different type of freight scenarios that might fit well there at PMT. So I think the future's bright. I can't say there's one segment, but we don't want to sit idle. We want to make sure we're exercising it.
Chris, speaking of jobs, with the $320 million expansion, how many new jobs is that creating?
Yeah, so I can't unfortunately give you an exact, each row of containers equals, maybe 5 new jobs, or because, there'll be additional jobs added both with our partners at ILA and their functions, and as the volume increases, obviously their headcount will increase. Organizationally, we've added. I think when I started at the port 5 years ago, there may have been 350 or 400 colleagues. I heard a number the other day of 550 colleagues. So we continue to add direct, Port of Virginia employment. And then you start looking at what's induced by the volume, and that's our motor carriers, the truck drivers. You start looking at, what Calmar's done here in the city of Portsmouth, or Coney next door in Chesapeake, and we start looking at some of those opportunities for growth and PCS, Port Rail Crane Service, what they've done there in Portsmouth. We've seen those headcounts grow. So I think it'll be hundreds, but really probably turn to be thousands once you have direct, indirect, and induced employment. It's significant, the economic value that expansion provides the city and the region.
Great. Any other questions?
I kept it I was joking. I said I have about an hour to speak today, and I'm looking at the clock. We're at 9:50. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. That was very informative, and it's always nice to see what the updates are and which way we're going here.
And I'll hand out a flyer and update for the board just so everyone can see where we stand on the projects after the meeting. I'll have to circulate.
I meant to ask this, and you probably don't know the answer, but Craney Island, what is the anticipated startup date for that now? Are we still 20 years out, or?
20, 30 years, and it's a 10-year plus build once we say go.
Yeah.
Okay. It's really going to be dictated on demand.
Right.
And I think we look at the capacity we're adding, plus the potential to optimize the NIT North End, adding additional, at some point in the future. So it could be 20, 30 years. I think really at this time and the moment we sit in, it's that planning, and making sure that as we expand the road networks here in the Hampton Roads area, working with the HRTPO and working with our rail partners, making sure that we're not creating barriers today that will have lasting effects well into the future, and I think the rail is one, and making sure the approach is such where these big unit trains can come in and out, and that they can come in such a fashion, down by the Coast Guard station and tie into the network that's already there. So,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Very well. Okay, that was very informative. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us. All right, moving along, Mr. Moore, I'll call on you again to discuss about our joint meeting with council coming up.
Yes, sir. We do have, following the joint EDA meeting, there is a joint meeting with City Council. That will be at the work session on Monday, July 23rd. That's at 6 p.m. You all have had these joint work sessions before. Again, an opportunity to have a discussion, kind of give an update on where we are as a board, and then at the same time have a dialogue with council with kind of their expectations and thoughts with regards to how we're doing from a maritime and port-related discussion. So certainly also, again, would like to have some input on any type of item that you'd like to specifically discuss with council at that time.
Okay. All right. Well, anybody that can make that, I think the last meeting, I believe all 7 of us were there, which was nice. So anybody that can, keep it on your calendar. Of course, Mr. Bento, you'll be expected to give a very in-depth report as to what we've been doing. So you can start working on that now.
Okay, thank you for the warning.
Staff will certainly help and assist with that,
Yeah, I didn't do a thing.
With
I just
that,
got up and talked.
with that input.
Yeah. All right, one other item for this session is an update on Atlantic Wood Industries. And I think you all received an email from the EPA with regards to the public notice on expansion of their project. And Rob, if you want to discuss that, if you have any further details on it at this time.
Not any additional detail. What we'd like to do is, you saw the public notice that went out. What we wanted to do, we were contacted by Mr. Randy Sturgeon about the addition of the Superfund site, the AWI Superfund site, as part of the landfill with regards to the project, and more specifically regarding the Burtons Point Road properties that you all have. Wanted to make sure you were aware of that notice prior to it hitting the paper yesterday. So we sent that out to all of the commissioners. Certainly, I'm sure you have questions. At this time, we don't have a lot of answers. I think it's best served if we allow the 30-day comment process to go through, which will end up right around the middle to the end of July. And then we are working to have Mr. Randy Sturgeon come in August to give you an update not only on the project itself, but also the feedback that was received. This is something that I believe, and I'll yield to council on this, but I believe this has been kind of talked about for years regarding this project, and just kind of bounced around as an opportunity potentially. And now it is happening. Again, potentially. And so they wanted to make sure that we were aware. Certainly we will have an update, or attempt to have an update for you in August. But again, this is just more for the informational piece of it.
Could I just ask a question? I mean, there's no additional cost to the city just because the scope increased, correct? No cost, correct?
Correct.
And then, of course, after this whole remediation is complete, is there an increase in value of the property that we own? Is that what I understood from reading?
Exactly. And so we would, I think you could glean that certainly from what we saw and what we have in this document. Again, I'd like to have Mr. Sturgeon here to certify, if he could, for all intents and purposes, that our assumptions are correct. We don't see this as a hindrance to the project. We don't see it hurting the project. But again, because it will directly affect your properties, we want to make sure that you all are aware of what is going on and have this specific information.
I'd just add, from the city standpoint, I think this is good news. I mean, there were agreements put in place 3 or 4 years ago. Every time you increase the cost of the scope of a Superfund and the cost increase, the state has to pay a share. So there was an agreement put in place with the state some time ago, contemplating that we would have this Burtons Point property used for fill. And EPA just hadn't put out the public notice for several years, which was making us a little bit nervous about whether they intended to do it. So this is positive.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but my opinion, we've sort of been following this from the very beginning, watching all this come together. And I was sort of thinking, there's this public comment period. Would it be appropriate for this commission to write a letter endorsing this, just go on record that we're behind it? Or is that something that, as a public commission, we should not do?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
I know how sometimes these public comments, you don't get a whole lot of them. And I just feel like if it is beneficial to our mission here, then perhaps we should go ahead and write a letter endorsing it.
I think that's a great idea to do that. My only interest would be what does this do for the timeline of completion of the project? And I mean, I know we don't really have. There's little we can do other than during the public comment period, because financially, I think we support it. But my concern is now we've taken what is already years and added more years until this is now usable property. And
Right.
I'd like to get an idea what those additional.
Yeah, that would be my one question to Randy Sturgeon is how far down the road is this going to push us? But if it's necessary, if they are determining that this is necessary, even though we wait longer, hopefully we'll see more benefit from this.
If it's value added, then it's
Yeah.
certainly
Yeah.
worth the wait. So.
So staff will reach out to Mr. Sturgeon and ask that question. I think we had, from a legal standpoint, some other just quick questions, with regards to the Vane Brothers property and so forth. So I think certainly we can get hopefully those questions answered. And once we receive an answer, we can certainly send it to the chairman, and the chairman can send it out to the board members as necessary.
Either you or me, whoever.
Yeah.
Whoever gets it.
Yeah.
They still have your email, so I'm
If it's
also.
before the 30th, if it's before the 30th, we'll send it to Chairman Barham.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Either way, I'll be around. Okay, very good. Well, let's keep an eye on that, and again, if appropriate, if we can get some sort of a letter drafted endorsing this, then I think that would be good. Okay, I believe that is everything for new business. I do believe we have one item for a closed meeting.
Yes.
So at this point, I'll go ahead and,
It's a resolution there.
I forget how we do this. Do I read this resolution? or-
I'll read it if you want. Somebody can move
Yeah,
based on the.
that'd be fine.
Okay. Whereas the Virginia Freedom of Information Act provides that the Board of Commissioners may hold closed meeting for certain purposes set forth in paragraph 2.2, 3711A of the Code of Virginia of 1950 as amended. And whereas in compliance with the requirements of the code, the topics to be discussed are set forth below. The subparagraphs of paragraph 2.2, 3711A authorizing discussion of the topics in closed session are set forth in parentheses after each topic. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners that it shall meet in closed meeting for the purpose of discussing acquisition of real property interests where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, West Norfolk Road right-of-way, number 3.
Okay, so we have a resolution. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed meeting.
So motion?
Okay, Mr. Wallace. Seconded by Mr. Bento.
All right. Mr. Barham?
Yes.
Mr. Bento?
Yes.
Mr. Peterman?
Yes.
Mr. Reinerberg?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace? We are in closed session.
Okay, very well.
Whereas the Commission has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. Now therefore be it resolved that each Commissioner, unless her or his prior contrary statement is in the minutes of this meeting, hereby certifies that to the best of her or his knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting by the Commissioners.
Okay, we have a resolution. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Mr. Barham?
Yes.
Mr. Bento?
Yes.
Mr. Peterman?
Yes.
Mr. Reinerberg?
Yes.
And Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Motion carries. We are in open session.
Okay, very well. I believe that is everything. Unless anybody else has anything for the good of the cause, then I will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.